So yeah, if you've already, those of you who have already seen the previous episode, this is World War Two. So welcome to the third episode. This was a particular kind of people. I mean, loads and loads and loads of people over the 6 years of World War Two fought and joined, to assist in World War Two and fight. And I mean, it wasn't always about fighting, but people assisted any way they can, allies and stuff. Um, but This is an interesting one. Indian servicemen served under not only like Britain but like the entire Commonwealth as well. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, etc. Probably South Africa too, Kenya. Um, Collectively, the Indian, well, Sikh and like Hindustani servicemen, their total numbers in the regiments and the just the blokes that generally signed up to help were among as many as 2.5 million members. Yeah, I thought that was very impressive, but yeah, they were very overlooked for whatever reason. But um, From what I read, they were there since the beginning of the war. Behind the scenes, on the front lines, and also mainly, you know, um, doing like scouting missions and all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, I think there were. I think Indians, the type of Indians I'm talking about, um, were very. They were very. They were very valued as like men who could do hard graft and do manual labor and were surveyors and trackers without pretty much complaining about, well, as far as I know. I mean, everybody had to be there, didn't they? I mean, there was probably no room for stopping and quitting and all anything like that. But um I mean, it's interesting to me because of my background. I mean, I'm not Indian as far as I know of any kind, but um, my own great granddad was a result of a fling during World War Two, so he could theoretically be of any, background. So I thought that was interesting too. But enough of that waffle. Um, but yeah, as many as 2.5 million Indian servicemen served under the empire. That was sort of my under the imperial whatever. I don't know. I'm talking twaddle. That was my attempt at a sort of a Churchill voice with the next stuff. Um, but yeah, I just thought that was a very interesting subject to cover this week. Um, so yeah, remember to like, subscribe, comment. Um, as is the case with all of my videos, including all of the fun facts with Liam videos. So yeah, that's pretty much the brunt of it, and I'll see you in the final one of this week. Hey up, it's Lee the History Boy, and yes, It's that time of the week, Friday, which means it's time for Liam's fun facts, or fun facts with Liam. 4 fun facts every Friday in 4 separate episode segments. And this one is about the Aztecs. Now, you may think, those of you out there, it's quite fascinating, the term prisoner of war. It's very associatively kind of modernised, if that's a proper term. For example, prisoners of war in World War II and a bit before. The Japanese had prisoners of war in bits of occupied China. Brits and South Africans had prisoners of war during the Boer Wars. Further back, I think particularly the Second Boer War, which was about 20 plus years after the first one in the 1870s. And of course, the Nazis had Auschwitz, which seems to overshadow, because it was because of what happened there, so it was so terrible, overshadows the rest of all the prisoners of war stuff. Even the other prisoners of war stuff in World War II. For example, there's another fun facts episode I made about relating to the prisoners of war that were captured by the British, and a lot of them ended up actually just staying on and having families. Lots of Italians and Germans over, that just kind of didn't go back. They didn't go back home after the war, probably because either they were scared of the reparations, or just they felt they had nothing to go back to, or it would have been too hard. But even for centuries, even before Mexico, as we know it, was founded, for all the conquistador stuff, and there were spats between the Aztecs and other Mayans, and they addressed that. That's quite addressed quite well in, for example, Mel Gibson's Apocalypto, which I highly recommend if you want a good historical action thing. I guess there are a few inconsistencies with, when the Spanish arrive and stuff like that, but I don't know. But it don't really focus mostly on that. The plot revolves around kind of people traffickers of the time, but it relates to the subject I'm going to talk about. And Aztecs had prisoners of war and would capture them for bargaining tools and stereotypically, as you'd expect, human sacrifices. There was a particular instance in 1487 at the Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan, if I'm pronouncing that right, where between 4,000 to 8,000 prisoners of war were sacrificed in the name of the gods. And all this sacrificing and prisoner of war stuff went on even into Hernan Cortez, when Hernan Cortez took charge of the city as well. I suppose in turn he captured some Aztecs and other Mayans as prisoners of war, as well as like a political kind of conquering bargaining tool. But it's even centuries before this incident took place, Aztecs did this kind of thing when they went to war as like one of their main war tactics. They go into villages or other cities and capture enemy scouts and sacrifice them in the name of the gods, because there's also, I'll put it in the link in the description, but it seems like there's a bit of Mesoamerican kind of equivalent of Ragnarok, the big death battle between the Norse gods, where all the gods would fight each other and also go to war and also possibly do sacrifices themselves, because there's this big bust up of blood and desperation and so on and so forth. So yeah, the whole prisoner of war thing, even though it wasn't really a term for 500 to 1,000 plus years, was still a practice in various parts of the world. So yeah, remember to like, subscribe, comment, and all that jazz, and I'll see you later in the next episodes. Hey there, and welcome to the second episode of this week's Fun Facts with Liam, and this one is about two people, technically, both James Stewart, or Jimmy Stewart, who was affectionately known for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, It's a Wonderful Life, Vertigo, amongst others, but he was also known for being the lead actor in the Glenn Miller story, and Glenn Miller is the second person that I'm talking about here. In a twofold kind of manner. So Glenn Miller was a big jazz band leader, really popular musician throughout the 30s and into the very early 40s, and did that one famous tune that all of you have probably heard somewhere, In the Mood, which I think was also used in a few Twin Peaks episodes. If any of you are big David Lynch fans, it was. I found it on Spotify. I found In the Mood and another composition by Glenn Miller and his band on a Twin Peaks playlist. I've never really watched. I've watched it. I've kind of dipped in and out of the series. But yeah. Well, the irony kind of comparison thing being that James Stewart served in World War II, and saw it through to the end when the Americans were drafted in, but poor Glenn Miller was actually a casualty of the war. I think just around this a year or within the year that the Americans joined, but like early, it was like either late 1940 when he died, or like I say, within the in the year that the Americans joined, but not until, because those of you who know about Pearl Harbor and stuff like that, they didn't join well late December in 41. So it was either, I think it was at least a few months, if that, before America's entry into World War II following the Pearl Harbor stuff. But Glenn Miller died before that, and what happened was, basically, from what I remember reading about him, was that he was on his way to play a concert in London. I mean, I'll include all the references and all that as per usual, of course. So the info on there will be more accurate to what I'm saying, but he flew, yeah, from when he was on the way. I believe he was on the way to play a concert in London, and unfortunately, uh, him and the bloke that was flying him to the destination, they both perished in some kind of bombing or shooting when they were when in the middle of the flight, and so um, yeah, so yeah, um, Glenn Miller didn't even serve in World War Two, but he was a casualty, and Jimmy Stewart, who played him in the Glenn Miller story, very much made it back and lived a long time. Um, so yeah, that was Fun Facts with Liam, episode 67, second episode of this week, of course. Um, yeah, and that's basically it for that one. I'm gonna have to clear some space or some crap like that because I've got 36 seconds left on the recording before I have to before it stops. So yeah, I'll get on with the other ones, of course. Ciao.
Okay, so this is the fourth and final episode of this week's Fun Facts of Liam, and overall, so far, the 89th episode. And I was scouring the internet for like weapons stuff and how far back stuff, warfare things, certain things in warfare goes. Like I did an episode on machine guns in World War One, one of the previous weeks, and those of you out there might know the whole thing to do with gunpowder being, in quotations, invented by the Chinese 3,000 years ago. Well, this is comparable to that. Of a thing I first heard in when I used to watch on DVD the 1990s Fantastic Four, and there was an episode where where Reed, Ben, and Johnny were sent back in time by Doctor Doom, while Sue was held hostage by him to find the coffin of Argos, and they were sent back to like some ancient Grecian times, and they've discovered they got involved in some kind of war with I think some kind of with the Persians. It's usually the Persians where they actually collected Greek fire, and Greek fire was a very real thing during used by the Byzantines and the ancient Greeks, and this Greek fire was thought to be a precursor or predecessor to kind of pave the way to develop flamethrowers. Basically, the tactics that developed Greek fire were basically advanced hundreds and thousands of years later to be used in the development of flamethrowers in at least World War One and World War Two. So yeah, as basically modern firearms, guns, rifles, whatever, were the continued advanced result of people in ancient China utilizing gunpowder flamethrowers were the result of the Greeks inventing what's called the legendary Greek fire. So yeah, it's quite fascinating to see how, because everything has a beginning or a predecessor of some kind. So I thought maybe just look for that kind of thing. People, fire itself is old as time or older than recorded history. So you know, a bit basically, why wouldn't it be? The whole the Greek fire thing is basically the equivalent of what if people in the BCE era and the early AD era found out how to make, basically figured out how to make flamethrowers. So that's what Greek fire is. And not much else to say about that. Yeah, be sure, the usual spiel, whatever, wittering on. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you next week as usual. So, yeah. Sorry if these have been a bit, rushed as you'd say, but I don't know. There's sometimes inspiration's quite hard to pluck out of one's one's soul, back of the mind, whatever. But this is basically it for this week. So be sure to view this, and I'll put all the references in there as per usual, and I'll see you soon. And I better be getting, and basically I'll be getting to bed in a few hours or whatever. So because it's midnight over here, and I'm not sure what else really to do with myself. So yeah, as my nan used to say to me as a kid, good night, God bless. Even though those of you who, like, for example, who live in east coast of the US and in Canada, if I've got you down as one of my audience, it's only going to be what, 5 hours. What, 8 o'clock in the evening, whatever. Those of you who live in Morocco and Portugal and all that are going to be on the same time zone, in Ireland, of course, and etc. etc. I'm not sure about like South Korea and everything like that, but anyway, you might be in front. You might be in the next day already. But yeah, that was basically it for this week's Fun Facts with Liam, and I'll see you next week on the usual day. So that's enough from me, and good night, God bless once again.
Evening, and yeah, it's that time of the week, that day of the week, Friday, for Fun Facts with Liam, for fun facts in one at a time, altogether 4 episode segments, if you will. And yeah, I was there's gonna be, yeah. No, I'll just shut up. I won't spoil what I'm going to say at the very, very end of the episode, very end of the 4th episode of the day, of the week, really, day week. Yeah, same difference, kind of. But yeah, yeah. Before I get into it, remember to like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. And yeah, so let's start off with probably the greatest, one of the greatest naval heroes, if not the greatest. Probably second. Well, the second is probably Horatio Nelson, arguably. possibly. I'm going to say maybe Lord Kitchener as well, but not really. He didn't have a chance to shine when he sank with that warship or whatever it was in World War One. But yeah, this is someone who was around hundreds of years before them, and we're going to talk about Francis Drake, the West Country sailor who explored. Actually, no, he didn't explore really, or did he? Drake. That's rarely. Sometimes I get mixed up between them, but nevertheless, he did a lot. He was born to, I think, a pretty much ne'er do well, but not too posh kind of family in Plymouth, or somewhere in the West Country. Anyway, I forget which, Bristol or Plymouth. But anyway, yeah, let's get to the subject of the episode and why there's a fun fact. Well, it's a fun fact episode. The Spanish, well, I suppose the Spanish Armada and all the other, the Spanish Navy, and at that time, all over Europe and England and blah blah blah, and so on and so forth. Depends what you count as Europe and politically and. But yeah, let's say, Spain, England, Scotland. There was very much, even before all the Matthew Hopkins stuff and the Salem witch trials later on, and the King James Bible stuff in the early 1600s. Yeah, there was still a lot of that kind of witchcraft stuff, paranoia going on. I mean, it's one of those kind of things that kind of brews and brews and brews for generations. And speaking of brew, the Spanish word for witch is bruja, and there's a difference between a wizard and a warlock. A warlock is basically what a witch is. It's like what a witch is, but a male, like a demonic dark version of a wizard with some, which is very much like a witch of old. They had like in the Old Testament they had stories of cauldrons and witches all the way back like 6,000 years ago potentially, whenever the proper Old Testament was written, 4,000 to 6,000 years ago. Anyway, any Batman Arkham Asylum fans out there, again, will know for example, because I like to reference these things from what I've learned, where you fight Bane, and he calls one of the doctors experimenting on him a bruja, which is witch, and so brujo is the Spanish word for warlock, and so the Spanish also believe that that Francis Drake had the power of a dragon or something as well, but they also because he was so good at what he did. He was such a good like captain and commander, naval commander, and all the rest of that they were just freaked out by him. They thought that he must have been some kind of warlock that could summon dragon's fire to just totally obliterate the Armada's ships. So even at that time, great, heroes, greats. I mean, Drake ended up being executed anyway by, Queen Elizabeth I. After being imprisoned in the Tower of London. I can't remember why she fell out with him, but I don't know. But the Spaniards were. They couldn't fathom why this one man. Well, one leader of a force on his ship kept baiting them. So yeah, they thought that he must have been some kind of supernatural. Who knows? But yeah, that was the first episode of this week's Fun Facts with Liam, and yeah, I'll follow suit with the other ones. Ciao.